health in your hands. I am Dr. David Ajibade with the Brain and Body Foundation, and we are continuing our discussion with Dr. Albert Mensah of Medical Mensa. We are talking about the things that you need, your child needs the first 1,000 days, the most critical time of a human being's life, in my opinion, at those first 1,000 days. And unfortunately, too much of the time, many of us get it wrong. So we're here to really say, okay, look at the different parts of the child's, the pregnancy, birth, that neonatal period, and what is needed and what isn't needed nutrition-wise. So, Doc, we've talked extensively about folic acid and zinc and vitamin D and vitamin C. You want to quickly wrap up on that before we move on into the first?
I do want to clarify one thing. Now, when I say stop the folic acid, I don't truly mean take no folic acid.
Okay.
If you look at the dosages for prevention usually originate around 400 micrograms. Okay. That is a high amount of folic acid. Okay. You can go all the way down to something very, very small and basic, like 15, 20 micrograms of folic acid. Okay. I'm not saying
what does that relate to? I think it's pretty standard what they give in the maternity and the antenatal clinic. What is that? What do they normally give them? Is that 400 micrograms?
Normally about 400 micrograms, but people have gone between 600 and 800 micrograms in some preparations.
Okay,
that's a problem because 800 micrograms is what we use to treat adults, and you're giving this to a child in utero. That's like saying you're using an entire building and collapsing it in order to kill a fly.
Yeah.
Okay, it's tremendously powerful, tremendously powerful. So even if you say you can't find a smaller dosage, and you take that one folic acid in a multivitamin, all right, you don't need to take it again for another 4 or 5 days. Put it that way.
Okay. I see.
That will allow the folic acid concentration to decrease. Okay.
Got it.
So that's one modification we may want to make. All right.
Okay.
So when we're looking at that, there are those nutrient elements that a mother should do well to have, and we talked about them: vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, in decent dosages. Now, in a typical world, if you've got a great diet and great capacity to have fruits and vegetables, that's one thing. Okay, but we know
5 to 9 servings, Doc. 5 to 9 servings.
Indeed.
That's what it's required.
But come on now, on the continent, we're speaking for people who don't know the African continent, tubers, carbohydrates, meat, not a lot of vegetables necessarily, in the diet, in the dietary regimen. So here we must talk about supplementation. But after that, so what do? You've delivered your baby, now what? Okay, well, a lot of the health that the baby needs comes from the mother's milk. Everything from antibodies to actually elements. Whatever the mother eats, the baby gets. Whatever the mother drinks, the baby gets. So it would be very useful to at least be on some level of some type of a general multivitamin, devoid of folic acid though. Devoid of folic acid.
No folic acid. Okay.
No folic acid. Get the folic acid from the diet. And the diet is in the form of dark green leafy vegetables. That's where you find your highest sources of folic acid. But you don't have it in such concentration that it wreaks havoc on the developing child. That's the difference. So there's nutrition and then there's medicine. People don't realize high concentration of nutrients is medicine. Medicine is for healing. You are made of these nutrients. That's what your body is composed of. Now, some are missing that are required. That's called fuel. That's the gasoline for the car. Your car doesn't come with gasoline. You have to go buy it and put it in. As vehicles, we don't come with high levels of zinc or with these other elements. We have to eat. That's what food is. Food is our external source that has to be put into the body. But now if you create a synthetic food that is a vitamin or a nutrient, and now you're putting in extremely high levels, that takes your system into a different functionality, one that can be detrimental. But yes, keeping a good balance of everything you've been told throughout your life already, the vitamin C's, the vitamin D's, the healthy things from produce and from plants and animals too, by the way. Very, very important. That takes me to something, Dr. David. So what's the common thinking around high-fat foods?
They're bad.
Really?
That's
Why?
common thinking.
Ah, that's the common thinking. Why? Who told us that?
Well, the doctors, really.
Yes, and where did we get it? You know where we got it from?
No.
We got it from some man's concept that had no scientific data along those lines.
Is that the Atkins diet?
Well, that's a different story.
Okay.
Atkins actually was talking about the fact for the need for fats in the diet.
His was need for fat. Okay, that was protein. Okay.
Let's talk about this for a moment because this is very important. You want to talk about developing children.
Yes.
What percentage of our brains are fat?
60% by dry weight, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So now, how often do you have cellular turnover in the human body?
Depending on the part of the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brain is the slowest.
But let's just say very simply, every day, right?
Okay.
Cells are made of what kind of structure that surrounds the cell? What is it that separates a cell from the outside environment?
The cell membrane, which is made of a lot of fat.
Cell membrane
Yeah.
is made up of what?
Phospholipids.
Phospholipids. Okay? So if you're turning over a cell and it's made of a lipid membrane, then you need to replace it. How do you replace a lipid membrane? How do you replace lipids in your system? From the foods we eat.
Right.
They are the source. Fats are necessary for brain development. We have been told the wrong thing for a long time, and it became dictum in medical science. Oh, give your child fat-free milk. Are you kidding me? Brain development requires fats. Give your children. Why is it that breast milk has a high fat concentration?
Right, right.
Would nature put something in our women that would be detrimental to the development of the child they are carrying and having to feed?
Not at all.
Doctor, we've woken up for a moment. We're actually thinking as opposed to being told things by nonsensical people that had no evidence in their statements.
Yeah.
Any mother, human or otherwise, that's a mammal that has milk that it gives to its young is rich in fat. That's because the human brain requires fat, not 2% fat, not 2% milk, not 1% milk, not skim milk, actual full concentrations,
Right.
fat. So my long story here, one of the most important things you can do once you develop that child, if you cannot breastfeed, make sure there's a good, high quality of fat consumption. I'm not talking about carbohydrates. Dr. Mensah did not say go eat pizza, okay? We're talking about good fats in the system. This was why the idea of red meat being bad for you was actually an erroneous concept. They would say because it's very fatty, there's a lot of fat in red meat. Well, of course, there's fat in red meat. Okay, fat has a purpose. And that same fat is what your body will break down in order to help you rebuild your cells in your system. And it's the fat in breast milk that takes care of the developing child as well.
So what if the mother can't, for whatever reason, can't breastfeed? What are the options for the baby?
Well, once again, there are formulations out there in terms of milk that comes in some preparation. Okay. And those kinds of things can be given to the infant. And those preparations can contain more fat content. They can be developed if they're not there.
Okay.
Or if you are in a country that has things like cod liver oil, or that has things like, what's the one we use? Omega-3 fish oils. Okay. Omega-3 fish oils are very powerful. If your child doesn't have pyrrole disorder, they're very powerful. And if you cannot do the breast milk thing, as they say, then omega-3 fish oils, which are fatty and they're anti-inflammatory, they're a good resource. Okay, you just have to watch the dosage in an infant. That's a whole different story.
Well, I know this. I can attest to it because omega-3s for a long time formed the foundation of a lot of what we were given to kids with some brain damage, specifically with cerebral palsy. And they
Correct.
worked wonders. Didn't know much about chiral disorders, but at least for cerebral palsy and other forms of brain damage at the time of birth was very helpful. So we know for a fact that helps.
Indeed.
How about eggs, Doc? So it used to be a time when eggs were not a good idea, but now are they a good idea for early?
Oh, another one of our bad myths from ancient medical history.
Yes.
Eggs.
Are they a good idea for early?
Oh, another one of our bad myths from ancient medical history.
Yes.
Eggs, one of the most complete foods anyone could consume.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another reason why cholesterol is in eggs. Cholesterol is the backbone upon which every single hormone the human body creates.
Every single one.
Every single hormone.
Not just the sex hormones.
Sorry?
Not just the sex hormones.
No, not just the sex hormones. Steroids, for example, they start with a cholesterol backbone. Okay? So our hormones themselves, you can't do a great job if you have no cholesterol. Okay? Cholesterol does not cause heart attacks. Okay? Many individuals in an emergency room who have a heart attack have normal fat levels or normal lipid levels. They're not high.
That is interesting. Okay. Where do we get that?
These are United States statistics. Okay? So it's not the fat that is causing people to have heart attacks. There are other factors that come into play. Now, I'm not talking about obesity. This is different. Right. I'm talking about the simple concentration of fat in the foods themselves is not the key factor. There's activity, there's all sorts of other things. Okay. So when you're looking at these discussions about things like eggs and certain types of foods, well, the cholesterol is necessary. It's part of your system. Okay. You cannot get good hormone development, good steroid development without cholesterol backbone. Okay? That's the foundation. Okay. So now 2 myths, fat and cholesterol. So now when you talk about eggs, it's got protein, it's got cholesterol, it's got fat. 3 very, very basic pieces for your system to survive on. Very much.
So would that be something that you would like? Is a general rule of thumb, which is revealing, really. Rule of thumb: if the child can't take breast milk or his diet is suboptimal, is there eggs? Can we give a lot of eggs?
Well, no. Until a child has teeth and can chew and swallow, we're not going to do those things.
They can crush it. They can crush the eggs up. They can boil it.
They'll often try that. And it's not a bad thought, quite honestly. But still, even crushing it, there's still particulate matter. There's still particles if you've cooked an egg. Okay, and you can't give a raw egg to children. So this is really for children who are able to eat. Okay, when they have teeth. Aside from that, then we have to go to different preparations that may be powders that you blend that now contain some level of certain type of fats, things like that, and milk, some formulation of milk that you give the child. Okay. But the key here is that the milk should not be fat-free. The milk should not be skim milk. And of course, it should be as organic as possible. Okay.
Is there any other thing with milk that you want to emphasize? I know you've mentioned emphasize fat and cholesterol. Are there any minerals? I know polysaccharides, the fiber that's in milk is helpful as well. But let me hear your thoughts on what else is in milk, in human milk, that's for some reason they may not be getting enough of, and you want to ensure that parents understand that this is what's important in it.
Actually, I think focusing on these particular keys is very significant. Okay. I'm not worried as much about polysaccharides and things because what we want to look at are the key elements.
Okay.
Key elements that we know, if they're deficient, create problems. There are always secondary and tertiary adjunctive elements that can be, useful. But if they're not there, does the building structure crumble? Okay. If you don't have fats, you can't properly myelinate nerve cells, right?
Right.
So how many nerves are in the human brain? 800 million nerves are in the human brain. Each nerve allows electricity to flow through and around it. The only way a nerve can do that, if you take away the fat layer from a nerve, electricity moves slower, right? When you have your fat layer, which is made of cholesterol, right, Dr. David?
Right.
Electricity moves very quickly. So for proper brain processing, you have to have that layer of fat around the nerves themselves.
Right.
No fat, slow conduction, slow electrical movement, slower processing, hindered brain development. Okay? Times 800 million nerve cells. Okay?
Yeah.
So forget all the science. Let's just think logically. Knowing a few key points. If fat is wrapped around a nerve cell and you need a nerve cell to communicate to another nerve cell quickly, and you have 800 million of them in the human brain, what point don't you simply say you need fat?
Yes.
Or that fat is bad for you?
Yeah.
Really? If it's so bad, then why is it so necessary for our human brains to work? Why?
I guess part of the argument would be that, well, they see in blood when when people take a lot of fast food and all that stuff. But you've addressed that. I mean, sometimes they check the blood and it seems a little foggy and because of the high fat content.
Now, again, we're not talking about obesity.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the typical Western diets that are high in really, really bad foods that are highly inflammatory, by the way, okay? We're not talking about cheese and bread and things like that and secondary fat levels, and we're not talking about those things. We're talking about just the idea, the concept of what fat and cholesterol really are, and that they are indeed a necessary part of a healthy human system and a necessary part of development, okay? You know what happens when you start to lose the fat around a nerve? There's a disease.
Multiple sclerosis.
Multiple sclerosis. Now, many people have heard the term MS, but do they realize the problem begins to happen because you are losing the myelination or the fat around the nerve?
Right.
So now let's visit this problem again. Is fat actually bad for you?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Okay. So all my long-windedness to say, before pregnancy, certain nutrients are important to an extent, and then they should stop. After pregnancy, this idea, this myth of skim milk and fat-free milk and all that other stuff should be stopped immediately. Give your children normal milk when it comes to any kind of substitute for breast milk. Milk when the kids are now 2, 3, 4 years of age and not breastfeeding anymore, but they're still drinking milk. They need fat-filled milk, not fat-free milk. Okay, that's extremely important. Now it's different when they're 15, 16 years of age. That's a different story. But this idea of skim milk needs to be stopped in early development of children.
Got it. Well, we don't have skim milk in Nigeria, so we don't have to worry about that. I don't think we do anyway. We don't
That's a good thing. But
milk.
Many of our so-called Western countries, however, you enjoy that. That's an adult concept, not a child concept.
Child concept, right. Yeah, I'm sure the bourgeois in Nigeria who have access to the big Walmart-like stores would probably have access to it, but for the most part, they don't. But again, many times people in the lower middle class tend just to not be careful enough about what kind of foods. And I always try to emphasize that you need to spend and sacrifice as much as possible now within these first few years of life so you can set your kid up for for the rest of his or her life, and you don't want to start scrimping now. You need to ensure that he or she gets the best form of nutrition possible. So that's why I appreciate you're bringing up all these things like zinc and folic acid for the first 4 months. And let's go over them again, Doc, so we can just round it up so people are clear about what we're talking about.
So let's be absolutely clear.
Yeah.
We're not saying that folic acid is not important. Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It is extremely important in development.
Yeah.
Before you're pregnant, and just to make sure dates are clear, for at least 4 months once you find out you're pregnant.
Okay.
After that, folic acid should be stopped. Okay.
Okay. Because you had stopped, but then we kind of backtracked a little bit and said,
correct.
Okay, is it multivitamins or something?
Those dosages should not exist. The prenatal vitamin dosages should not be given to any pregnant mother after the first 4 months.
Okay.
So if you take a prenatal vitamin again after your 4 months in development, maybe you take it just once a week or once every week and a half. Okay, because that will give the opportunity for these dosages to dwindle, so you don't have so much of an effect building up in your system. Nutrients can build up in your system. Okay.
And the danger with folic acid is that if you take it for too high a dose for too long, it can result in undermethylation problems such as ADD, ADHD, and autism.
And autism, yes, absolutely. It can also predispose you for schizophrenia susceptibility later on in life.
It won't cause it. It can just predispose you so that if the circumstances.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying schizophrenia is only caused by folic acid, not at all. There's a multitude of symptoms or circumstances that come together to create that phenomenon. What I am sharing is that what we know is that people who are not designed to be one way can be artificially affected by nutrients to produce a different version of the way they were truly designed. And that version is a more susceptible version than the original picture, the original creation.
Got it. All right. So folic acid, where you talked about other things like vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Now, the beauty is that when you're taking a multivitamin, the zinc and such is in such low quantities that it's not a problem. So in a multivitamin, zinc levels are not a problem at all. Okay.
But before she's pregnant, she needs to be having 50 milligrams around, which is not available in multivitamin tablets.
Correct. So higher dosages, and these things always would be discussed with your doctor before you take them. Let's make sure we have that caveat very clear.
Very good.
Feel free to ask Dr. David what the appropriate dosages will be, because he and I will be talking anyway.
Absolutely. So, and like we said before, folks, you can always reach out to us. You have the social media platforms and the website, so you can get with my staff and they will connect us if you need to talk to us. So Doc, yes, we're going to have to round up very soon, but this has been fantastic. So at least we're bringing out and emphasizing some things that parents need to know about, especially mothers, right? So I like what you said about fat too and cholesterol, because that's really important.
Yeah. Well, we know, given our stews and our soups and all those wonderful things, that you can literally see the fatty layer. Those aren't the detrimental pieces necessarily. Okay, it becomes a matter of how much, how often, and how much exercise, how much movement do you have? All those things come into play.
And I think it's really important to just the fact that we have someone who's actually measuring these things and seeing the data and seeing the research and saying, okay, this is what you can do and this is what you shouldn't do. So I think that's super important.
Absolutely, doctor. And then even more important, doing the research is one thing, seeing it clinically is another thing, but sharing that information so that we are now aware as a global community. That's the most important thing.
Right.
That's the most important thing.
Right. Whew, we could go on forever.
Indeed. So much to do, so much to learn, so much to share.
So little time. So, Dr. Mensah, thank you so much, folks. You've been listening to the Master at Work, Dr. Mensah of Mensah. And we definitely will be hearing from him many more times in the future. So, thank you, sir, so much.
Dr. David, always a pleasure. Thank you. May you and your patients and everyone be well.
Thank you. Thank you. So, folks, there you have it. Please stay healthy, stay strong. Your health is in your hands, so you got to take control of it. So, God bless. Remember, these videos are archived on the website, brainandbodyfoundation.org, free for you to access. And if you have to get a hold of us, you know how to do that. If you need help for your kids with brain disorders, sickle cell disease, again, reach out to us. We ship to all over the country, all 36 states. You just have to pay for shipping, but the supplements and the medications are free. So don't make sure you take avail yourself of that. So God bless, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.